Today on the Big O podcast, I am joined by former Northern alumni and current assistant international scout for the Toronto Blue Jays, Mr. Julio Ramirez. Julio, ¿cómo estás? How are you doing today, brother?
Hey, very well. Very happy to be here, connecting with you for the first time in a very long time.
Yes, man. Yes, man. It's been some time, and I'm glad that I can't remember how, but I came across your Instagram page somehow, and I was thrown off. I saw the first name, I saw the handle, and I was like, what kind of handle is this? So you're gonna have to explain that to me at some point. But I'm glad we got to connect. I got to see some pictures, and I noticed you wearing some Blue Jays gear, and then obviously the thing as a parent of two young children, I immediately was drawn to your little one.
Yes.
And so it's, how is being a father during COVID right now? How's that treating you?
So it's been a great time because obviously with work we travel so much. So
Right.
The one silver lining behind anything that's been going on is the amount of time of actually being able to spend with her.
Right.
So just seeing the day to day, waking up with her it's been unreal.
Now, we were talking just before we started recording, and you were saying that, her first language, or the language she's picking up right now, is Spanish.
Yep.
And so that's amazing. So she's got a lovely, nice mix of Venezuelan and Colombian. So I'm sure at some point there's going to be a battle of family between soccer and baseball. Has she picked up anything so far yet?
So when she's with me, I'm like, throw the ball, throw the ball, don't kick it. But she does both. She actually
Right.
she's been kicking it. But I think first she was throwing. And the other day we were watching the Jays game, and she started kind of mimicking the swing.
Oh, okay.
Here we go. We're on the right path.
Now, are we putting the ball into her left hand? Because obviously, the lefties is a little bit of more of a market for those guys.
Yeah. I noticed she's drawn to the right side. She does everything with the right hand, but we got time to switch that up.
Fair enough. Switch hitter. They're still early to mold. So a little bit of our history is we actually went to Northern together. And correct me if I'm wrong. The baseball team was varsity, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So I was towards the end tenure at Northern, and you were coming up with there were a couple young bucks on the team. I know you played baseball through most of your life. I know you got to play baseball at Northern. And then I also saw you got to play baseball at Ryerson for the Rams.
Yeah.
When did you sort of develop that love for baseball, and how did it ultimately end up with you getting hired by the Toronto Blue Jays?
Yeah, so if we're taking it back, for me, just growing up, my dad from Venezuela, both my parents from Venezuela, baseball just comes naturally. It's always on. It would always be on the TV. So I would sit with my dad, watch games. He'd kind of educate me on what's going on. So I kind of just sitting with him and learning the game through him.
Yeah.
We kind of kept it that way. Similar to what I'm kind of doing with the little one now.
Right.
I just have it on, see if she likes it or not, and we'll see. But cousins, honestly, all my family in Venezuela, it's all baseball.
Right.
You go to Venezuela back then when it was good, when the country was in a mess, it was all baseball.
Right.
Big leaguers advertised everywhere. So it was just always around me, and then I just naturally just picked up a love for it. Grew up playing Christie Pitts.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, so I grew up playing Christie Pitts. We actually I don't think it was a really well-known organization for winning, but my year we had a really good team, and we won 5 or 6 city championships in a row.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had a really strong team, and then from there, kind of played at a more elite level. Was playing for the Toronto Mets.
Right.
And then finished up playing in Etobicoke. So it almost felt like I was that. So I went Christie Pitts. At one point, I ended up somewhere in Hyde Park. Etobicoke was west. And then
you got to take your talents all over the GTA.
Yeah, exactly. Never ended up on the East End though.
That's right. It's interesting. So did you play Little League ball?
I never played Little League.
Oh, okay.
Never out of Hyde Park.
Yeah, my one of my good friends, actually my best friend and the best man at my wedding, Sean, he actually used to play for Hyde Park, and actually left the team the year before they qualified for the Little League World Series.
No way.
It's like the one thing that he always sort of like brings back. Like if he stuck it out like one more year, he would have been on that team that got to go and represent Canada in the Little League World Series. So you graduate Northern, you play baseball at Northern. One of the things that I loved about Northern that they really started picking up towards,
Oh yeah.
I would say like the end of my year was they got super competitive. Like they were always at the top, qualified for OFSA a couple times, which I have actually a funny story that I'll get into in a second. And then they started doing these amazing road trips.
Yep.
And so the year they started it was actually the year after I left Northern. So I missed out on it, but I got to live through some of the cool stories from like Fenway and like PNC Park and Comerica. So during your time at Northern, what were the trips that you got to go on?
Yeah. So in grade 9, that was the first trip, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
So we went. I think grade 9, we just kind of kept it close. We went to Detroit.
Right.
It's beautiful. Like it's nice. The one thing I will say, like Mr. Gaw, like killed it.
Shout out Mr. Gaw. Mr. Gaw was
Mr. Gaw.
amazing.
He realized, all right, well, we got some talent here. We can take this a bit more serious. And then he just wanted to expose us to the U.S.
Yeah.
So then one year, Detroit. The next year, I want to say we went to Cleveland.
Okay.
But prior to Cleveland, like we made a stop, I think in Detroit again, then Cleveland.
Nice.
Then we also saw a couple of minor league teams. So it went from like being like a 3-day trip to ending up being like later on, they'd be like a week, a little bit more.
Wow. Like a whole experience, right?
Yeah. And then
I feel like that's a good thing, right? Because like you're graduating high school, or people are in high school looking for what could be next for them. So it's good exposure to see like the minor league systems and stuff like that. So where else did you go? Sorry for interrupting.
Fenway was the coolest one. We have Yankee fans on the team.
Oh wow!
Came in with Yankee hats. Well, I was like, I don't know if this is a good move. And then by the end of it, would take the hat off and started rooting for Boston. Like that's how fun it was there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, you gave me a little bit of a hard time because I'm obviously rocking a Dodger cap right now, but from your memory in high school, I was actually and still am a Red Sox fan, big Red Sox fan, and. You know, even being in Toronto, when I always rock my Boston gear when they're playing in Toronto, and the Toronto fans aren't, you know, I've been to Fenway, I've experienced what it's like to be an opposing fan, and it gets kind of rowdy. But listen, Toronto's not that far off. Toronto's pretty rowdy when it comes to their team. They love showing their support, and if you're not cheering for them, and your team is losing, you best believe you're going to be hearing it all day, all game. But Fenway is one of my like favorite places I've ever been. Forget baseball, just ever. Just the nostalgia, the memories that sort of just like are exposed and thrown out from there is just incredible.
Yeah, there's like an aura there when you walk in.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Yeah, you get hit with, especially if you're a baseball guy, you get hit with like the history of, one of the longest standing baseball stadiums in MLB history, right?
Yeah.
All right, so you finish high school, right?
Yeah.
So you get out of high school, you're going to Ryerson, right? What did you study at Ryerson?
Took business management and then minor in communications. Took some Spanish courses, get that GPA up.
That's it.
Ryerson was really random though. It was literally the last day of I guess I can't remember what they call it, but the last day where you can send in where you're going.
Okay. So was that like pre-New Year's? Was that like when you were applying, or was that afterwards?
After. So you get your acceptances.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
It's like decision day.
Yeah.
And then Ryerson was not even in my top 4.
Right.
And I'm going through the list, and I was like, you know what? Something just told me just go to Ryerson.
Right.
And then end the story. Like it worked out. It's timing, everything was like unbelievable.
Now, were you planning to play baseball outside of high school? Is that one of the reasons you went to Ryerson?
No, so Ryerson didn't have a team for the first 2 years, and I'd gotten some like small offers to go west, some really small U.S. ones, not anything good, like great.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of like, it's not really worth it. It wouldn't have been worth it, and then. So baseball came in, I think, in my 3rd year at Ryerson. And I was like, oh, man, it's been a couple of years. Like, I'm down. Let's do it. And Ben Rich actually is the coach there, and he started the entire program, like
Wow.
built it from the ground up. He came over from, I think, Carleton. He had
Okay.
coached there, and then he did everything to get a program at Ryerson, and like he funded it. It was he did a great job. And then yeah, that was a like really fun experience too. Like by then I was, man, it was tough. Like I was so bad. Couldn't
Well,
hit
I
anyone.
mean, you're like 2 years off of playing, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure you're not as exposed to it as when like you were playing before prior to that.
yeah,
But I mean, listen, it's an experience. You get to do what you love, right? You grew up loving
yeah.
baseball. Any
Oh, oh my
opportunity
God.
to play the game, whether you're at that high elite level again or it's just fun to get out there, it's always a great time playing baseball,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So I want to go back because I remembered as we were speaking, Mr. Gaw. So Mr. Gaw being the fantastic PE teacher, and then I'm pretty sure was the convener during our time because he used to pick all of like the home fields and
Yeah,
organize
yeah.
that. We'd always get the Lee side games because he loved that park. But it's funny because in my grade 12 year, so right before you guys are Northern, we qualified for OFSA, and OFSA was it was somewhere outside of the city. But it was close. It was in Ontario, and we had our three main pitchers were Corey Procopio,
Yeah.
Jeremy Russell, and Bora McManus. I want to say, and Bora wasn't allowed to pitch for the high school team because he was playing club baseball, and so on paper he didn't pitch. He pitched the game, but what they did was when it came to an official scorecard, they put my name down. And so I will go down in OFSA history as being 0-1 and having I don't think it was a bad or terrible ERA or anything,
Yeah.
but I'll go down in history for Northern that the one loss we had in OFSA was because of me. It was my
Oh
terrible pitching
wow,
performance.
that's amazing.
It's just it's one of those things. Mr. Gaw was just like you said, instrumental in organizing those trips, really having a feel. Like you could tell he loved baseball.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, he had the calves for baseball for anyone. Like he had the most
Oh
Olympic
yes,
sized
yes.
calves I'd ever seen in my life. So at what point do you then, you go to Ryerson and you're trying to get your degree? Are you thinking that you still have some sort of involvement with baseball for a full-time job? Like, are you thinking you want to land with the Blue Jays at that time?
So yeah, I can walk you through all this. So that for me, like I always knew I wanted to get into baseball,
Right.
but I had no idea what that meant, how you do
Right.
it. I wasn't exposed to that. You can find these things online, but it's just who's looking at it at the end of the
Right.
day. Is anyone looking at that? I don't know. So I got really lucky. I think it was again in my third year. We had Sherry Bradish, who started this whole program at Brock, like really successful. I believe the Leafs GM is out of her program.
Okay.
Andrew Tennant,
Kyle, is that Kyle Dubas?
I want to say it is, but
Okay.
I don't want to be misquoted. I don't want to say it.
That's okay. Listen, we don't fact
Yeah.
check here, man. We just say it.
And then Andrew Tinish, who's like my boss, like he's the man, but he came out of her program too. So she's very involved with sports in Canada. Like, so she had come over. She's to start a new sports marketing program at Ryerson.
Nice.
And then I was like, oh, of course I'm gonna take this class. Sounds interesting.
Right.
And then a couple of my buddies are in there. She takes a liking to like our groups, very involved, but we have fun with it, like very
Right.
loose. And then I don't know. One day she came over and she's like, Julio, like, why do I know you? What do you do here? I was like, I play baseball, and that's it. Like I don't do anything else in this school. Like, go home, and that's it. And then she's like, oh, you like baseball? So she explained that next week we have a surprise. Like I haven't told anyone, but the Blue Jays are coming in. I'm going to introduce you to some of the guys. I
Wow.
was, oh, that's awesome. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, yeah, sure.
Right.
I didn't believe, like, I don't know. Are you going to do it? Great. Then I'm the following week, again in the class, and I can see her kind of looking. Oh,
Yeah.
wow, she's just pulls me down, introduces me to Andrew Tinish, and then a couple other guys in with the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
And one of them was Hans Sing Leung, who actually used to be one of my coaches.
Wow.
I get to start talking with him. Like, oh, man, I completely forgot you work with the Jays. And then he reintroduces me to Andrew.
Wow.
And then I'm getting another conversation with Andrew Tinish.
Yeah.
And then, so it was just like a great networking opportunity. And then from there, they do their presentation. I remember they're talking about certain things, like what they're looking for,
Right.
what is like the ideal employee with the Blue Jays, and like I'm like doing check mark. Like, wow, this is like new. Check mark. Yeah, speak Spanish. Okay, played. And I was like, wow. Okay, so after I go back and I was like, hey man, like, you're really interested in anything? If you have any tips, or it just kind of gives me his email, and then from there we're emailing, like 2 years almost.
Wow.
But a lot of the time I was hesitant because I'm busy guy. I don't want to be annoying.
Yeah.
And it was Sherry Bradish, who was like persistent. If it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have kept sending the email.
Wow.
And she would always tell me, I'm going to go get lunch. I'll bring you up. And so long story short, we move into my last year at Ryerson. It was literally the last day of my exams. Me and my buddies we're done. We're going to go get a meal for lunch. And we run into Sherry. And then Sherry's like, oh, I'm actually going to go see Andy. Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm like, oh, today's my last day. I have no plans. Going to go backpack in Peru for a couple of weeks with my buddies. She's like, okay, all right, well, I'll bring you up. And then don't hear anything.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of Peru. I finally get Wi-Fi. And it's like a bunch of like email, text message, email, and I'm like,
wow.
LinkedIn, like, who could this be? And then it was Sherry. She's like, hey, like, check your emails. And I go on, oh my God, like, I don't have Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you when I can. And it had been Andrew explaining, hey, we have this opportunity come up. Not saying it's a job. It's just a way for you to meet more people. And I kind of went with the motions, just meet a ton of interviews, getting to learn a lot about like what they do. So it was a really cool experience. So that was like probably like a two-year process just to even get like to the interview portion.
Jeez.
And then the interview themselves were like, it was a lot, but it was great.
So you end up, is this the position that you're in now with the Toronto Blue Jays?
So I started off as an intern. So those all those interviews were for an intern position.
Okay.
And then the intern position is fantastic because they will allow you to kind of pick up different parts of the game. If you want to get into pro, amateur, international, you have an ability to really dive in and learn as much as you want. And then you kind of cater to your interests, like what you see, but obviously being able to still provide help in other facets.
For sure. Yeah.
So I did an internship for like 2 years. It was a lot of fun. And then eventually that turned into full-time with like the assistant role for international scouting.
So then day to day. So let's talk, because obviously, COVID hit and that changed the game for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Let's go pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you're doing as an assistant international scout?
Yeah, so I think it just depends. So if I'm in Toronto, I think ideally like the perfect explanation is just kind of like I'm a bridge, like I bridge the gap between what's going on internationally.
Okay.
And bring that info back to the front office.
So you have scouts that are in those countries watching live games or watching videos of those games, and what they're giving you like a list of names or prospects or people how young do they start? Yeah,
so I can go through all that. We have scouts in like, I want to say for Latin America, because that's mostly what I deal with, is like Dominican, obviously Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, Mexico, and then obviously like with Venezuela and the DR being where more of our scouts are living.
Right.
So everyone has their own area. They cover their area. They it's based on years. So you're like the class. This year's a 2020 class.
Yeah.
Which will start a couple years ago. So you're looking at 2020 players, and you kind of have a running list of like, okay, these are guys in my area, and then you're just kind of ranking your area.
Right.
And then on top of that, you might have the supervisors who are on top of the area scouts, who are now grabbing each area and then ranking dudes from different area. So you get like a top list essentially. And it starts now it starts really young. Like I think the youngest kid I ever saw was like 12.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's super young. And it's crazy to see how talented these kids are.
Well, I mean, they grow up, right? So think of like living in Canada, I would say, think of hockey, right? Like kids are starting hockey at like 2, or maybe not 2, like 3, 4, 5 years old. As soon as they can get on skates, as soon as they can handle a stick and a ball, like they're getting into the sport.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening in these Latin American countries or countries all over the world, right? Like we sometimes forget Japan, Korea, like they've got great baseball organizations and they've got tons of development. We're seeing it now with like, Ichiro and Hideki Matsui and, all these guys, Otani, who just came over to the Angels. I mean, we've seen a mass exodus of guys coming at a younger age now to play from other countries. It's not just an American thing,
Yeah.
but a majority of the major league is made up of people from Latin America, Dominican Republic, Cuba, like all of
That's
these
right. Yeah.
places, right? And so you're getting these lists from all of these different regions, all of these different scores for how you rank them, because everyone's graded on a tool system, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Right. So can you go through like what let's say a pitching tool? What are the things that you would grade for a
Yeah.
pitcher?
So I think so. The tool system is like the 20/80 grade.
Right.
50 being average, and then anything below you consider below average, fringe, and then an 80 grade is excellent. Like
Right.
so, pitching's like there's a lot that goes into it. So like the first thing I'm doing, if I see a guy on the mound, I'm like, all right, like how projectable is he? Like body wise, what's he look like? Is he athletic? Are the movements loose? Essentially, does he make it look easy?
Right.
Right now, what I'm trying to see is like, is this kid a starting pitcher, or is he going to be a reliever? And then
Right.
from there, I'm moving forward. So it's like, okay, starting pitcher, why? Does he have at least 3 pitches? Can he command the fastball? If you can't command a fastball, you'd be in a lot of trouble, and
Right.
that might position you to end up being a reliever.
Okay.
So I want to. You're looking at fastball command, velo, and obviously they're young, so they might not have the velo, but there's different ingredients that might tell you he can get to more. You want to look at like how the ball spins on a curveball. Is it tight, loose? Does he have feel for the pitches? Again,
Right.
like a lot of that can be learned. Like once you get into the pro leagues, you have amazing coaches who you're gonna develop with. So for me, it's just kind of okay. I think if you can command the fastball, we can work from there. You
Okay.
command the fastball, and I see something that says you're athletic, like you can adapt, you can adjust. The body can move certain ways. That'll tell you like, okay, yeah, there's some ingredients for him to get better and learn other pitches.
Right, because you're also looking at like size, right? You know, they get a little bit taller, they couldn't put on
Mhm.
a little bit more muscle. Like those are all things that are
Yeah.
going to factor into how they're going to develop, right? Everything is like you said, it's a projection. There are no guarantees about things. There are no locks for things. I mean, the thing about, guys coming from like the Japanese league, for instance, they have to be a certain age and
Yeah.
play a certain amount of years
Mhm.
before they can come over. So they're almost kind of like finished products.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas, we see guys like a Vladdy Guerrero, for instance, sticking with the Blue Jays.
Yeah. Yeah.
He tore it up in the minor leagues. He had the name that got him the recognition in the door, obviously with his dad playing for the Montreal Expos and then the LA Angels. So he was like a name talent. But when you saw what he was doing when he was hitting the ball,
Yeah.
how he was hitting the ball, the fact he was hitting for average, he wasn't striking out a whole lot. I'm sure he was probably as close to a lock to make the major leagues as you could have as a lock. But in season 1 of him coming up to the majors, we saw a little bit of the coming back down to earth, just a little bit, because in the minor league systems, you're only going to play against a certain ceiling of talent. Obviously, when you make the majors, you're in that final upper echelon tier, and it's an adjustment. And for all intents and purposes, he started to get it towards the end of the season and has given the Blue Jays a lot of hope in their young core. Your Kevin Biggio's, your Bo Bichette's, your Nate Pearsons. These are all guys who are that next wave of Blue Jay that have come through scouting and drafting and developing within the Blue Jays organization. Yeah. This year, we'll get into in a second, because how many draft rounds are there on a typical full season for the I guess it would be like was it the amateur draft?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when I started it was 50.
50, okay.
50, yeah. And then,
so I believe the only reason it got lowered, it was down to 5 for 2020. Yeah. Was that because of COVID, or is that like the staple going forward?
Yeah, no, just a weird year. It was so
okay.
When I started it was 50, and then it moved to 40.
Okay.
And then because of this year, just weird year, it dropped it to 5.
So let's say you're looking at 40 rounds of drafting, which ultimately at a minimum, you're looking at 40 picks for your team. Now, this is to fill your system, whether it's starting at a young age and get some guys who are in high school, maybe some collegiate players who are almost at the stage where they're going to be going to either rookie ball or double A or triple A, or maybe even in some cases like a Bryce Harper from a few years ago, like ready to step in to that major league season at a very, very young age, which doesn't happen often. How many guys are on your list to draft going into a 40-round draft? Like, how many guys make your list knowing you're not going to get everybody because people are going to take your guys. Some people may not take your guys. But how many guys start on that list pre-draft?
Yeah, it's incredible. I've actually been able to sit in on a couple of drafts.
Oh, wow.
It's incredible, the whole process. It's a bunch of guys. Like, I don't even know. It's so many. Like, every area scout does a tremendous job of just breaking down the areas. I was overwhelmed because when I started interning, I had to move a bunch of the magnets. So we would make magnets of all these players. Okay. Guy comes off the board, I gotta find out. Oh my, where is this? But it's like an overwhelming amount, like unbelievable. Like, guys that aren't even gonna be drafted are on the list just because they've been seen. So you put them on just in case someone else picks them up. You have to know who the guy is, but it is a lot of names. So different scouts. So you gotta think it's like scouts, then you have their supervisors, and you have like national cross checkers, like special assignment. It's a bunch of names.
So how many people are in that war room for draft day?
I think draft day itself is like a bunch of front office staff. You'll bring in the supervisors, national guys. It's probably anywhere from like 20 to 40.
Wow.
Yeah, it can get pretty high.
So we move from, the large draft to 5. So for 5 rounds for the 2020 COVID year, which means you have to be way more tighter with what you're going to get. Now with the Blue Jays this year, all 5 draft picks came from the States. There were no international draftees this year. And so the number 1 draft, or the first round draft pick for the Blue Jays was Austin Martin. Sorry.
Austin Martin, yep.
I get confused with the car. And so there's a lot of buzz coming through him because they projected him to go a lot higher. So when he fell to the Blue Jays were super excited about it. He was invited to, I guess, the makeshift
the camp,
spring training camp, and very rarely are guys get a breakthrough in their first camp. Mainly there's a lot of issues which we won't get into with service time and all of that fun stuff. But one of the other things when it comes to the draft that is different from most other sports is that there are slotted positions for draft when it comes to like signing bonuses and money that is allowed to be paid to a certain player at a certain spot. There's obviously now a business aspect to it, not just about a talent. How does that factor in? Because you could draft, let's say, a high school player or a high school age player, and he may think that he is a higher value person if he goes to college for a year or two, or even tries to get back in the draft the next year. How does that, how many different things are you guys juggling when you're thinking of drafting a player? Because it's not just as simple as talented guy, we want him on our team. There's so many other factors that go into it.
Yeah, a lot of it is, it is tricky. Like, first of all, you got to know signability. Like, is the guy, what is he going to sign for?
Right.
Like that, I think with the 5 rounds was the most important thing. Like, you have to know what his signability is. Like, is he going to sign for X amount of dollars?
Right.
And 5 picks, like, you cannot waste any of them.
No, for sure.
So there's a bunch of things that go on. Like, it's like, I don't really know how the phone calls go with the agents,
right.
But it's got to be like a lot of cat and mouse. Some are more open than others. Some are stay private.
Yeah.
But I think it all goes down to knowing your players. Like our scouts did such a good job of figuring out the makeup, who he is, and like even to get Austin Martin was just incredible. When I saw his name, I couldn't believe it. I was like, this can't be happening.
Yeah.
Like, didn't go 2, okay, 3, nope, still didn't go. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. So as an organization then, let's talk about a little bit more of like your experience then. So some of the guys that you've been a part of seeing them be drafted and then developed? What's like the other than we'll take away Vladdy. What are
Yeah,
and maybe Bo Bichette and Kevin Biggio.
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
get into the lesser known guys.
Okay.
What are some of the guys within the organization that you've been a part of, seeing and reporting on and feel like, this is the next tier of guy that's coming
Yeah.
up in the next few years?
So I would say, so Vladdy actually came in the year before I started, which
Okay.
is like a legendary story on its own. Like I came in and you just keep hearing the legend of Vladdy essentially.
Yeah.
Um, but so for international, there's like a international signing date, which has
Okay.
actually been pushed back. It's usually on July 2nd,
Right.
but this year I believe they said January 15th. So
Okay,
the
that makes sense.
2020 class will be signed in 2021.
Oh, okay. All
COVID,
right.
the way it
Yeah.
goes. But yeah, so 2016 outside, the first player I ever saw going international outside of Blue Jays, just like first guy I ever saw was
Yeah.
Wander Franco, like top
Oh,
prospect of Tampa.
yeah.
And I was like, I heard the buzz. I go into this place in the Dominican, and he's just kind of warming up, and it's just so easy, and he's hitting bombs, man. Just BP. Game time comes, he's got this swagger. It's just nice and easy.
Yeah.
Boom, line drive single. It's like, damn, all right. Goes plays defense, like makes this just nonchalant play, just so smooth. Like, yeah, this guy's the real deal. So he's one that stood out. Obviously, those are the players that just make it easy. It's like, yeah, he's
Yeah.
done. So it's finding the other guys. But for me, so 2016, I actually got really lucky. So they sent me to pretty much live at a complex for about 2-3 months, where I got to see some of our new signed players.
Okay.
So one of them that really stands out, actually, there's a couple. So Otto Lopez,
Okay.
he's a Dominican, but he actually lives in Quebec.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He spent a couple years, so he speaks a bunch of languages. So I got to see him there. I always thought he was gonna be good, but I didn't know how good the bat was gonna get, and he's been pretty legit. I
Okay.
believe he played Lansing last season.
Okay.
So keep an eye out for him. A little Canadian connection there. Gabby Moreno, who's a catcher, who's starting to get more famous within the baseball world. But he was a guy we saw when I saw him in 2016 in our complex. Always knew, like, just contact ability. He could hit anything.
Okay.
But then for me, it was like, okay, he's got to shrink the zone a little bit because he's chasing stuff because he's
Right.
such a good hitter. But now he's converted into more power, super athletic, and it plays as a catcher. He signed as an infielder. They converted him to a catcher. So he's definitely another name to look out for. 2016 was a good year. And the thing is, we were kind of penalized because of the Vladdy signing. So we were capped by how much we spend.
Gotcha.
But we had a lot of good arms that year. I'm trying to think. Those are two that just stood out right away.
Right.
2017, then it's at Pardinho's year. Eric Pardinho, who's a Brazilian pitcher. He's good. I think he just went down with Tommy John. And then pretty recently, I got to see a Cuban signing.
Okay.
We signed Yosfer Zulueta, like 21 years old out of Cuba, up to 96. He's an honor, like, keep an eye on. Yeah. Not many people talk about him.
The main reason why I asked you this is I'm in a fairly competitive fantasy baseball league that we draft minor leaguers, so I'm gonna take some of this knowledge and maybe not tell any of my buddies about this. But no, I mean it's an interesting thing because again 40 rounds, there's 40 different draft picks on a typical year. I can't imagine that all 40 of those guys are going to make it to the big league level at some point, right? A lot of them are going to be guys that you project, guys who you're hoping can convert to another position if it doesn't work out. But I would probably say like 50% of those guys see out their time within the organization that drafts them. Is it less than that? Is it more than that?
Ooh. Yeah, that actually make it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be less than 50 in a draft, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you're getting 40 new players every single year, and that's outside of your international signings. Offhand, how many international signings do you guys typically have?
Last year, we had the 40 drafted players, and I want to say we signed 40-something international guys.
Wow.
So that's like, yeah, it's a bunch. It's a bunch.
Yeah.
So
And how is the agreement now with a place like Cuba made it easier for you guys to sign, right? Because before, with the Cuban government, the U.S. government, it was a little bit harder when it came to like defect. Guys had to defect, whereas now you can actually sign a player and he can come over. Has that made life a lot easier for you guys when it comes to taking the risk on a Cuban player?
So there was like it looked like at one point we were going to be able to actually finally go into Cuba and start scouting, but I think Trump said no, we're not going to work with them. So
so it was the Obama administration that was looking to bridge that gap then.
there was something there. It was even with Trump, like it looked like it was getting there. Like
Yeah.
there was rumors. It was like, oh man, we might actually get to go to Cuba. So kids still have to defect.
Right.
It's a crazy process. Like
It's
I've only
unfortunate.
really heard, one, and it's one of those like I don't want to ask. Like I don't ask. It's just
Yeah.
you're here, man. Like
Makes sense.
yeah.
I mean, we're seeing a young crop of international players now. You got your Ronald Acuñas, your Vladis, your Juan Sotos. I mean, it's definitely a multi-country sport now. It's not. I mean, we have some Canadians. I mean, Mike Soroka, shout out to him. Pitched opening day for the Atlanta Braves. There's a little bit of Canadian content, but it's definitely a Latin America or international game as much as any other sport ever is, right? You look at basketball, maybe it's more, American. A little bit of Canadian is starting to jump into that market, but baseball is definitely, World Baseball Classic comes to mind. Mexico, Venezuela, DR.
Yeah.
I mean, Japan. It's the one time I would say on a major sport where the U.S. isn't in that like lock to be the greatest team, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's interesting, especially nowadays, because we can't ignore the fact that COVID has sort of thrown things on its head. There was a chance a few weeks ago we weren't even going to have baseball until Rob Manfred said, "Yeah, we're going to have a season. Here are your rules. This is how it's going to sort of follow." And there's still so much uncertainty. A guy tests positive, what's going to happen? There's still travel. It's the only sport actually right now, until maybe football starts, where teams are traveling to play.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball's in a bubble, soccer's in a bubble, NHL is going to be in a bubble in 2 hub cities.
Yeah.
So baseball is really sort of taking the frontier on moving around. And the Blue Jays. So I want to get into the Blue Jays. I won't talk about my Red Sox. But in a 60-game season, it really is one of those times where if you get hot, any team can really make a big push to win a championship, not to mention the fact that they've opened up additional wildcard spots.
Yeah.
And so as an organization, as the Toronto Blue Jays, that plays in one of the highest, most competitive divisions in all of sports, with the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, the Tampa Bay Rays. I'm not going to say Baltimore because, Baltimore is Baltimore. I mean, the Blue Jays have to like their chances with the young team that they have as far as making their push, having those guys be able to make a difference. As an organization, like what are the rumblings inside saying?
Yeah, I think guys are just excited because you're starting to see all the young guys finally get up and play. So today we have Thomas Hatch pitching, who we got last year in a trade, but it's just examples like we're pulling guys who maybe the rest of the industry hasn't really heard of yet.
Right.
And we're excited because we know they can perform. Like these are good arms, good players. So we're hoping that it all comes together. It's 60 games, like you said, so it's a sprint. Like if we get hot, bats get going. For me, like me personally, I'm just excited to finally see all these guys that I've kind of come up with. I didn't, but like I've seen them, I've heard them
for sure
the past 3-4 years, and it's like wow, here they are on the TV now, as opposed to seeing them taking BP in Florida. Like it's incredible, and it makes it fun for me. It's like see it a little differently, but that's how I'm taking it. It's like I'm kind of just going with the flow, and like whatever happens, I'm excited. Like we get winning. With these young guys, like the next couple of years is gonna be really good. But there's a ton of talent though, coming, and more coming.
And that's the thing, right? They say that you can look at this in that glass half full, half empty kind of way, right? Glass half empty. Oh, you have a lot of inexperienced guys. They're young. this is just one of those years where they get their feet wet. Or you can look at it as these guys are young, they're getting to know each other, they're playing loose, and in a season where it's a sprint, as you said, and not a marathon, you start believing in yourself. You start, rattling off 5, 6, 7 wins in a row. You're winning 4 out of 5, games, or sorry, a series. You're looking at, with an additional playoff spot opened up for teams, you're looking at a definitely chance where you can compete against some of these teams. And the way the seeding works is that you could actually get an easier matchup depending on where you finish, right? Like, it's such a strange time that to take from the Boston Red Sox breaking the curse in 2004. And I'm sorry, I know I said I wouldn't bring them up, but I will now. Why not us? Right. And I would love nothing more than the Toronto Blue Jays to do well. Right. The city is buzzing. It's ready. As much as I would obviously say, if my Red Sox are in the hunt, that I would rather my Red Sox win.
Yeah.
But I mean, if the Blue Jays, I remember what it was like in that Texas Rangers series.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
I remember what the city was like. I remember what, society was. I remember the whole country was behind this team. And during, something like COVID, it's really what, like, the fan base and people need. It's the distraction, something to cheer for. There's baseball on all the time. Next weekend, when, August 1st comes around, NHL, NBA, MLS, UFC, boxing, baseball, it's going to be sort of like this pandemonium back to normality, or at least the new normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very exciting time. What has it been like for you, just to, like you said, you were doing the internship and you had the opportunity to learn a lot. What has it meant to you to be able to work for an organization that you grew up cheering for? How has that worked out for you?
Oh man, it's been like a dream. Honestly, like, it's incredible. And then just to see the work that goes into it, and then learning from all these guys, like, it's honestly, I still, like, pinch myself. I'm like, how did I get here? Like, how did this happen? Like, it's almost, I don't even have, like, words at times. Yeah.
So what's the next step for you then? So you're the assistant international scout for the Toronto Blue Jays. What would be, the next place that you would like to see yourself in, like 2, 3, 4 years?
Yeah, I would love to just stay with the international side. For me, that's my passion. There's a lot that goes into that. Like, when we go to these, like, signing days on J2, like July 2nd stuff.
Yeah.
Just seeing these kids that remind me of, like, my cousins back home,
right,
and how happy they are with their families when they sign. Like, it's a lot more than just baseball. I don't know. For me, it feels like I'm helping them, but it's not really. Like, it's all them. It's a feeling of, like, I don't know. It almost feels like I'm giving back, but I'm really not. It's just a cool thing that happens there.
Well, you're part of helping them make their dream come true, right?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Because in some of these countries, getting drafted by a Major League Baseball team is their way out.
Oh yeah. Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
Because some of these places, while I mean they do play in their country leagues and they could go on to have a great local career, getting out and being able to get recognized, even get that paycheck to help out family back home, to improve the position that their families are in, or even have the ability someday down the road to bring their families out of that to move to another country. You being a part of that is part of helping them achieve their dream.
Yeah.
And you're really, I mean, you're doing your job, but at the same time, I mean, I'm sure a lot of these things, like, you guys are factoring in as well when it comes to, how old they are, where they're going to develop, putting them in the best situation for them to be successful. You are essentially helping them achieve their dream. And that's gotta, when you see a kid sign on the dotted line, or, if their family's there and, they see how excited they are, it's gotta, pull on your heartstrings a little bit too, right?
You see a lot of tears. It's incredible. And obviously, like, it's such a different dynamic, Latin America. Like, these kids are picking baseball over school. So it's really all or nothing for them. And then there's other dynamics where it's like a lot of these players who end up making the money end up kind of becoming the parent. So it's just a bunch of different things that go into play.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing. Listen, Julio, it's been a lot of fun. I know you got to get going, so I'm going to let you go right now. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. Hopefully, maybe we'll do a mid-season, rehashing of this. We'll talk a little bit when we know a little bit more about what's going on with you, and hopefully the wild success of the Toronto Blue Jays.
A bunch of W's coming.
That's right. A bunch of W's close to the border. Obviously we would have loved to have them playing in Toronto, but I mean, Buffalo is the literally the next closest thing to what we can have. Listen, nothing but success for you and the Toronto Blue Jays organization. Good luck with the young one.
Thank you.
Keep enjoying everything, and thank you for joining me today.
I want to thank you for having me. It was,
of course.
I feel like we barely scratched the surface, so we definitely got to do this again.
100%.
There's definitely a lot more baseball we could talk about. I'd love to do that. So if we talk baseball, I can go for hours.
Well, listen, man, don't make promises you can't keep. I'll bring you back on to talk baseball.
Oh, let's do it. Let's do it. This is we're doing it.
Awesome. Julio, thank you for joining me for the Big O Podcast. I'm your host, Julian Ortiz. Thank you for watching and listening. Take care, everybody. See you, brother.